Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast powered by Ollipop. If you want to drink pop, Coke, whatever, Ollipop's the way to go if you want to be healthy. We all have that certain craving. We all love the bubbly, the fizzy thing going down our throat. Feels good, tastes good, but why not do it and be healthy? Ollipop's the choice to do it. Probiotics, prebiotics, they have it. All your 4 convenience stores of Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, and Sprouts. You can also go to drinkollipop.com, type in the promo code CHAMPU20 to get 20% off any one of their 16 variety of flavors. Right now, I believe it's apples. What is it? The fall flavor? Apple.
It's crisp apple is the name of the flavor.
Crisp apple.
Quite delicious.
I've been drinking it. I had a fruit punch earlier today. It's perfect. It's perfect. You get that little kick. You need your caffeine. You got to have it. I got to have some extra caffeine with my Ted Lasso Roy Kent mug. But all in all, Ollipop is the way to go. Also, before we get going here, and I know you guys want to hear our thoughts on college football this weekend and some recruiting nuggets that we will talk about with certain big-time offensive linemen, among other things. But we got to pay another bill real quickly, and that is Manscaped. Hey, Sooners fans, we would like to thank our new sponsor, Manscaped, who has taken a step up from Halloween to bring your face the cleanest shave it's ever seen. So this season, no need to toil and trouble. Manscaped's all-new Handyman is the best way to get rid of that stubble. Featuring a compact design and next-gen skin-safe technology, the Handyman was designed to give you that smooth finish without the mess of a traditional shave. Get the sweetest treat this Halloween by going to manscaped.com and use promo code OUInsider for 20% off plus free shipping. Again, go to manscaped.com, use promo code OUInsider for 20% off free shipping. And I'll be honest, the other thing that I've been dealing with is trying to make sure this beard continues to look fresh and clean every day. My wife likes it trimmed to a certain length. So I have also used the Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit. And you want to know why? I was thinking about this the other day. I was looking down. I was like, dude, I've got so many guards and little adapters that you use for all different lengths of shave. Well, with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit by Manscaped, you get 20 different lengths all with one guard. It's a cordless hair trimmer. It comes in a variety of lengths, like I said, all 20, and it's perfect. I don't have a clutter in my drawer anymore. I reach down there, I find the perfect length, and I start shaving and trimming my beard. All you have to do, again, is go to manscaped.com, type in the promo code OUInsider, you get 20% off, and you get free shipping, whether it's the Handyman, whether it's the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Manscaped.com, promo code OUInsider, 20% off plus free shipping. For a look so sweet as candy, get yourself a Handyman from Manscaped. All right.
Boom.
Bam. How about that ad read? Love it. Love it. Love it. Let's rock. All right. What a day in college football. What a Saturday.
It was, honestly, I know Oklahoma wasn't playing, but if you were an Oklahoma Sooner football fan on Saturday or a member of that OU football team, for instance, particularly the guy that throws on number 8 every Saturday, yesterday was about all you could ask for, because Sooners fans got a USC loss, which no doubt they're always thrilled about. And in the midst of it all, in part due to that USC loss and how ugly of a game it was for the Trojans, you saw Dillon Gabriel rise from 4th in the Heisman odds in Vegas to 2nd, behind only Michael Penix. The top 2 contenders for the Heisman Trophy, per the experts in Las Vegas right now, are 2 left-handed quarterbacks. How about that?
It's got to be a first, right? 2 lefties. Got to be.
I would think so.
Yeah, at least one of the first 2. Maybe there's been 2 or 3 other times in the history, but there can't have been very many. There's only How many left? I'm a lefty. I'm
Yeah, me
actually
too.
ambidextrous. Ironically, we're both lefties. We both throw left-handed. Though I eat and write
Revenge of
with
the
my right hand.
Southpaw, baby.
Yep. But everything else I do left-handed outside of golf. Everything else is left-handed. I golf right, eat right, throw right, or eat right, right with my right hand. Everything else left-handed. It's crazy. I don't know. But yeah, the southpaws, what is there, like 8% of the population, something to that extent, is
Yeah,
left-handed?
it's somewhere between 8 and 9%. And the
Yeah.
left-handed quarterback, man, how many of those are there in college football right now? Gabriel and Penix are the two that immediately spring to mind. Brennan Armstrong lost his job at North Carolina State. So, gosh, if there is another left-handed starting quarterback in the Power Five besides those two, I can't think offhand of who that is. So, yeah,
Somebody in the comments when we put this up is going to tell us.
oh yeah, definitely. See, the
But
comment section is smarter than us. That's why we rely on them.
correct.
But
Yes.
what an interesting coincidence it is that the top two contenders for Heisman right now are left-handed quarterbacks. And for Dillon Gabriel, man, it really does feel like, and I never would have imagined this would be the case, but
Max Johnson's left-handed.
oh, Max Johnson. Yeah, you're
Just
right.
off the top of my head. There you go.
You're
By the way.
right. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I
That just
wasn't
hit me.
thinking
I
of him.
just
I
said
still
it.
had Connor Wegman seared in my brain, but I guess he's done for the year at this point. But Dillon Gabriel, if nothing else, he's got the most iconic Heisman moment, if you will, this season with that touchdown pass to Nick Anderson to beat Texas. And he hasn't, well, how do I put this? The wheels haven't fallen off for him in disastrous fashion in any individual game. And that's what happened last night for USC and for Caleb Williams. And look, Caleb Williams is still the best player in college football. Let's not get that twisted. But he had absolutely no help. His offensive line is a sieve. Alex Grinch's defense, while they weren't solely responsible for the loss last night, certainly did him no favors. And as a result, he had what is, with little argument, Brandon, the worst game of his collegiate career. 199 passing yards, only one touchdown, 3 interceptions for the very first time as a collegiate player. And as a consequence, especially looking forward at USC's schedule, some of the defenses they're going to have to play, some of the opponents on that slate the rest of the way for the Trojans. Last night's loss was a severe hit to Caleb Williams' Heisman hopes. And Michael Penix led Washington to a big win over Oregon. Dillon Gabriel got the benefit of sitting at home and watching the sparks fly.
Yeah, he did. I was trying to think of a game that Caleb struggled. And the only one I can think of is the Baylor game.
Yeah, Baylor in 21.
In Waco. But he was a true freshman. It was his third start ever? Maybe his second start? What, you got TCU?
He was third. TCU and Kansas.
Third. Yep. So that to me says a lot what Notre Dame did that night. And we talked about it. I wish we could do like the Josh Pate thing where we're like, cue it, where they and he brings up what he said the previous podcast leading into the week. But we said it. He said, Caleb Williams is the best player in college football. Might be the best player that's come out of college football in the last decade. What he has, though, is a lot of deficiencies around him, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the defense, whatever. Ironically, it wasn't Alex Grinch's defense that cost it on Saturday night. Nope. It was Zach Hansen's offensive line. And those that remember, Zach Hansen was offensive line coach at Oklahoma State, was at Missouri, Texas A&M. Now he's at USC. He's an Okie. And I was just telling Parker off the air, ironically, it's going to be a poke that cost the former Sooner his Heisman. and I felt bad for Caleb. I'm straight up honest. I felt bad for him. Everybody knows my relationship with the family. Like, that's not even a secret at this point. I felt bad for him because he got the second he got the ball, he was having to literally run for his life. Run for his life. There was no time. We even gave we were talking about the example, Parker, off air. 4th and 3, 4th and 2, whatever it was. The second Caleb gets the ball and tries to make a handoff, there's 3 Irish sitting right in front of him tackling him. He's trying to pull the Kansas and pull the ball back out. And obviously that player didn't have the I can't remember which running back it was for USC at that time, but they didn't have the IQ of Kennedy Brooks just to let it go and let Caleb take it and run. And the unfortunate part is that was just the beginning of the night. That was early in the game when that took place.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was like Caleb, he took a beating. He took an absolute beating that night. And ironic, and then he took a beating in the Heisman poll. And as good as he is, as we said, if he has a bad night, and it may not be just because of him having a bad night, it's because offensive line, whatever causes him to not be on his A game, essentially will cause USC to lose because he's all they got.
They're entirely one-dimensional.
They're so one-dimensional.
Entirely one-dimensional. And this goes to show you, though, how thin the razor's edge is in the Heisman race.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot have a bad football game, at least not in a matchup that's nationally televised where you got a lot of folks paying attention to it in real time. You cannot afford a performance like that. Otherwise, it's going to tank your stock in the Heisman race, and it has. And supporting cast matters. And what we talked about on the last podcast, right? The supporting cast at USC was always the thing that was going to have the opportunity more so than anything else to drag Caleb Williams' Heisman stock down. And it has in the span of 60 minutes of football in South Bend, Indiana. And right now, if you're Dillon Gabriel, you're looking at your schedule the rest of the way versus Washington's schedule the rest of the way. And I guarantee you, Dillon Gabriel is not doing this. He is not paying any attention to what the pollsters or what the odds makers are saying about him versus Michael Penix in the Heisman race. But my point here is this. If you are looking at those two schedules side by side and figuring who has the greater opportunity to watch it all come crashing down in a single evening, like Caleb Williams did last night, those opportunities exist in far greater abundance on Washington's schedule than on Oklahoma's schedule. So I have been hesitant to throw this out there or to validate the buzz and the hype, as it were, until now. But there's a very clear path for Dillon Gabriel to win the Heisman Trophy, Brandon. There's a very clear path for that to happen. And pretty much all he has to do is exactly what he did over the first half of the season. He does not have to be throwing for 450 yards and 6 touchdowns a week. All he's got to do is maintain that high completion percentage, maintain the prolific production as far as yards and touchdown to interception ratio. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? You have to keep the ball out of harm's way. And especially with what he's been able to unlock via the ground game these last couple weeks, especially. Again, all he has to do, in my mind, to win the Heisman is exactly what he did in the first half of the season. Because I think there will come a point at which Penix is stifled. If only for a single game, I think there will come a point at which he has a harder time pushing the football downfield and getting the ball in the hands of those talented wide receivers. There's no evident roadblock for Dillon Gabriel because UCF is they're Swiss cheese as a defense. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, not terribly imposing. Kansas, TCU, BYU. Again, there's not a defense on that schedule that I believe at this point is going to be able to meaningfully slow down Dillon Gabriel's game. And so it's kind of wild that we're sitting here talking about Dillon Gabriel having a better shot at the Heisman Trophy than Caleb freaking Williams. Because Caleb freaking Williams is a special talent, the likes of which we have not seen in a long, long time, maybe ever in college football. But again, man, every game matters. Every game matters. Stability, consistency, that matters just as much as flashiness and glitz and the wow factor to your play. And that's what has Dillon Gabriel in the thick of things right now. Consistency and stability.
This episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast is sponsored in part by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? I feel this on a regular basis. Even while recording this very podcast, I'll have 5 or 6 thoughts bouncing around in my head, but you can only communicate one at a time, and it can be difficult to keep them all straight as you communicate them. That's not the only manner in which your brain can interfere with itself. So if you feel like you know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't do it, well, therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so that you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/OU Insider today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OU Insider.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing, and I think it may be overlooked a little bit, is the fact that everything that was said after that 49-0 loss last year. Well, what if Dillon Gabriel was in there? What if this? What if that? Was proven correct, how much better of a team they are with him in the lineup than without him. Now, obviously, last year's situation was completely different. They didn't have a backup. They have a backup that is probably going to remind a lot of people of a combination of Baker and Caleb mixture whenever Jackson gets in there, just as far as his skill set goes. I'm not saying talent-wise he's at that level because we haven't seen that yet. Potential-wise, yes. He has the potential to be he could be a he could be a number 1 overall. He has that type of talent, that type of arm. He's got to prove it on the field. So the quarterback situation is completely different. That said, anybody, national media, all local media, all the fans know is that when Dillon Gabriel wasn't in the lineup, OU was awful on offense last year versus Texas and versus TCU, mind you, the 2.5 quarters they played without him in Fort Worth. So all of this kind of goes hand in hand with the fact you see what he did by going 49-0 to a 34-30 win over Texas. The last second drive, the Heisman moment. Herb Street talked about it on game day. There's not a player out there. Now, Penix, obviously, he had his Heisman moment. That final drive was great. That ball was chef's kiss, I might add, with that pass. It was an amazing pass. And they scored. They go up on Oregon, and now Oregon's defense had to, and Bo Nix almost pulled off his Heisman moment with that final drive. They kick a field goal, they go and tie it and go into overtime. The Heisman moments are nullified at that point, and now you got to see what takes place in the overtime. But that didn't take place. Both teams even. I think you're going to see both those teams. Are they in separate divisions in the Pac-12 or in the same side? Do we know? Does Pac-12 just do the top 2 teams?
Yeah, the Pac-12 just does the top 2.
Those 2 will play again. That's a wrap. Those 2 are playing again. Just kind of like the Big 12. Those 2 are playing again. I think whoever comes out on top throughout the conference title games, and I don't know, will the conference title games they'll be played? Most of the Heisman votes will have to be put in prior to that, right? The conference championship games? That's
yes,
the week before.
I believe.
That's the week before.
I'm trying to remember. Okay, so I remember casting my vote last year while in the press box at McKinney High watching Jaden Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the day of the conference championship games, because I was tracking that TCU Kansas State game while watching Jaden Hardy while casting my Heisman vote. So, yes, I think that was the last day. I think that was the last day to submit the vote. So, I wanted to see how Max Duggan played, and then if he didn't absolutely light it up against Kansas State, I was going to vote for Caleb. And so, cast the vote, and that was that. So you will be, I think you do technically
so you voted
have
for
the
Caleb
option.
Williams to win the Heisman. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, people know that. Yeah.
I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you.
But I think you do have the option to wait until after the conference championship games to submit the vote. There's a window where you can you can choose to submit it before the conference championship games, or you can choose to submit it after the conference championship games. At that point, it's really just, it's a matter of personal philosophy, right? Does what happens in a conference championship game matter to you in your selection?
Right. Okay. Gotcha. So, but I think essentially by midnight of Sunday, everything has to be put in, correct? Like it shuts down after that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there, I guess my point is made. I think what you see, most people will have, like you talked about earlier, how Dillon plays leading up to the game. And mind you, I have said the Oklahoma State game is going to be their toughest game, I feel, on the road. Bedlam, I think they're going to be up for it. I know you disagree.
Well,
but after the Kansas
on Friday,
game,
I don't know if I disagree today.
I tried telling everybody, Gundy can coach, man. That dude gets it. And they have improved. I still think Oklahoma is going to light them up. I think Dillon Gabriel is going to have himself a day because that defense is not very good. It's ultimately going to come on the backs of Danny Stutzman during that game and what that defense can do. If they can completely shut down everything that's going in, Alex, if they can shut down just the offense as a whole, OU will come out, I think, will win by multiple scores. But I'm telling everybody, it's not going to be the cakewalk everybody thinks it was going to be. And I tried telling everybody, I watched them the week before, and I was like, ooh, they're starting to look pretty good. Like they started to, you could see it kind of coming together. And then against Kansas, way different. Now, if Daniels is in the game, different ball game.
Yeah, things change.
But Bean was still unbelievable. What did he have? 500 total yards and 5 touchdowns? But he threw 2 costly picks that really hurt them, if I remember correctly. And I don't know, man. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. I know Oklahoma has UCF, but are you starting to jump on that bandwagon with me that Oklahoma State could be the hardest road game for OU?
Until we know definitively what the heck is up with Jalen Daniels, then, yeah, I would say I'm trending in that direction. Things came crashing down to earth for BYU yesterday, too. I thought that was a better football team than they showed against TCU, which TCU is the wackiest team maybe in the entire Power 5 right now.
They're a good team. They just can't put it together some weeks for some odd reason.
Gosh, the Big 12 is just full of enigmatic football teams.
It's very true.
But then you have Oklahoma head and shoulders above the rest. And again, Brandon, we said it after the Texas game. If this team does not get in their own way, they have a very clear path to 12-0. They have a very clear path to an undefeated regular season.
Is OU and Michigan the 2 most complete teams in college football right now?
No, I would still say Michigan and Georgia are a step ahead of Oklahoma.
Even Georgia not playing until like midway through the third quarter every week. They do that against OU and Michigan.
Well, and what you must keep in mind though is
out of the stadium, bro.
Yeah. Well, what you must keep in mind though is that Georgia did that all year last year too. How many games did they play a lot closer than they should have against teams that were nowhere close to on their level? But when push came to shove, they were dominant when it really mattered. So I have no choice but to trust the back-to-back defending national champions and what Kirby Smart has built there. And so, as I see it right now, Georgia and Michigan are in a tier of their own, and I think Oklahoma is at the very upper region of that second tier. And depending on what type of momentum they can build as a program and how well Dillon Gabriel plays, especially down the stretch, then I can see myself elevating Oklahoma to that same category as Georgia and Michigan. But right now it is Georgia and Michigan for me at the top.
Okay. Well, I kind of have, and I've been, even before the season, I was more, I got called such a Debbie Downer because I had OU 9-3, 8-4, 10-2 at best, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, you suck for that.
I know, right? Hey, well, guess what? 6-7 just happened, and I wasn't going to get caught with my pants down again, going all in homerism or sunshine pumping. So I was trying to be a realist, and I wholeheartedly believed 10-2 was a ceiling for him. I thought maybe if they got lucky, 11-1 could be possible, but they would have to catch fire. I did not see the defense being as well-rounded and as good as it is today to start the season at all. Did not see that
and
coming.
You know what else you didn't count on?
I don't think anybody did, to be honest.
You know what else you didn't count on that nobody could have counted on at that point was how good these wide receivers have been.
Again, right on. So all that said is, after everything I said during the season, I'm now buying into it, and I may be buying too much stock, but I have it kind of, for me right now, I'm always going to put Georgia number one just because they're the back-to-back national champs, and until they get beat, there are no others than them. I mean, I think that's the only way you can do it, because of we haven't seen them play. Yeah, obviously they're not going to play Oklahoma or Michigan or whoever until the playoffs. So you have to keep them in that upper echelon. And then I got Michigan, even though they got ran out and boat raced by TCU last year. Essentially the same team, but they're a year older, a year better, a year more complete. They've added some talent, though I still think Harbaugh is going to run out of time because he's not recruiting at the level you would think he would at Michigan, being as good as they've been. We'll see how that transpires after the next few years. And then I got Oklahoma. And I know Ohio State. I get it. Big Ten fans. Let me tell you a little secret. One of those two are going to jump into it no matter what, because they got to play each other. So I'm not going to give you two top 4 Big Ten teams when one of them is going to knock the other one out.
Yeah,
just not going to happen.
Don't forget about Penn State, though.
Penn State's my 5. That's the thing. Is the Big Ten, particularly that side of the Big Ten, is freaking stacked. It's an unfair, just ridiculously good division. It is the best division in college football. That is without question. There's the
utter imbalance between the two halves of the Big Ten is astonishing.
It's stupid.
Iowa will probably go 11-1, Brandon. You look at that schedule the rest of the way, they will probably go 11-1 and play in the Big Ten championship.
You said Iowa and I fell asleep.
Exactly. Like they will probably go 11-1, play in the Big 12 championship, and get absolutely skull drug by whoever emerges from the other side of the Big Ten. Because what's hilarious, Brandon, is you go look at total offense in the entire FBS. Iowa is dead last by a mile. It is not close. I think
Ferentz isn't going to have his son back next year for offensive coordinator. He's not.
Well, that's the thing.
Average.
Like, he's going to have, statistically, he's going to have every reason to fire him. But the football team is going to win double-digit games, and so undoubtedly, Kirk is going to be able to, like, if it really comes down to it, and the boosters and the stakeholders for Iowa football press him to fire Brian, he's going to be like, why would we do that? We're winning games. He's going to have every reason in his own mind to keep up the nepotism and keep Brian Ferentz as his OC, which, again, dead last in total offense in the FBS. I think they're 131st out of 131, and I think number 130 is Eastern Michigan, which still is averaging like 40, 45 more yards per game than Iowa. They are below 250 total yards of offense per game.
Oh my God.
Below 250. There are only 3 or 4 other teams in the FBS that are below 300, to put that into context. So It is the worst offense in college football, and yet that team is 6-1, nationally ranked, and has an exceedingly easy path to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game.
Where do you think Iowa is in total defense, by the way?
They've got to be up there. I'm talking way up there. No? Did that Penn State game wreck the metric?
Yeah, they're 27th.
Okay. So still up there, but yeah, it does sound like that Penn State game kind of had an adverse effect on their overall ranking. Because they got beat 31-0 by Penn State. 31-0. They're playing with the backup quarterback.
Oklahoma's not even in the top 50 in total defense. That's yards per game.
Yeah, sure. That's believable.
Whatever.
That's believable. Yeah. Again, Oklahoma has been a bend, don't break defense. Speaking of Iowa, I was there on Friday night.
You were.
That was fun. It was cold. Chilly night out in Western Iowa. But finally got the opportunity to watch Grant Brix in a game environment. He looks good, man. He's a mauler. He's a freight train.
How much bigger is he than everybody he plays against? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, he's
on that note, I want to ask you this real quickly before we talk about Brix. Just real quick.
Yeah.
How in the hell is Iowa always so freaking good at football? Go look at the recruiting. I never understand. Like Kirk Ferentz, if he was at any other school, he would have won how many natties? Like if he could actually pull in some sort of talent to go with how well and how disciplined his teams
Brandon,
are.
Iowa is consistent, and they are good for all of the same reasons that Oklahoma State is consistent and good.
Development,
culture, S&C. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And they don't change because they don't need to change. At least in their eyes.
No.
You got two of the longest tenured head coaches in the entire FBS. Ferentz is the longest tenured. I'm pretty sure Gundy is tied with Kyle Whittingham for second. So, again, in those folks' minds, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it hasn't been truly broke for Iowa or Oklahoma State yet to this point. So, shoot, why bother trying to recruit with schools like Ohio State and Wisconsin and Penn State and Michigan State for Iowa? And why bother trying to recruit with schools like Oklahoma and Texas and LSU and Arkansas if you're Oklahoma State? Why go to such extremes if you can do exactly what you've been doing and consistently win football games, make bowl appearances? That's because that's good enough. That'll be good enough to keep your job. That's why Brian Ferentz is still employed, because Iowa does not have a championship standard. They have a winning standard, and they win every year.
That's fair. That is fair. All right. Again, speaking of Iowa, you were at Iowa. Talk about Grant Brix. You've had a crystal ball or futurecast, whatever you want to call it, put in for longer than everybody else. I put one in on Friday night, and then after I put one in, Parker, the floodgates opened.
Yeah, imagine that, right?
Everybody. Yeah.
Imagine that. That doesn't tell you where the intel originates, then I don't know what does. the circle of communication. But no, look, I felt, and it was a true crystal ball, if you will. I know that's not the terminology we can or do use anymore, but when I put that prediction in back in early June, it was based on trends. It was based on the vibe that I'd gotten from several interactions to that point with Brix in person. There was just kind of a feel that, okay, with what this kid's priorities are, with how he's wired, and with the position that he plays, he's a very natural fit for Oklahoma. I knew Alabama was too far, and I figured, okay, because at that point we knew his official visit schedule. We'd known that Iowa and Iowa State were out of the picture, that he wasn't staying within state lines. And so we knew that he was going to take official visits to, at that point, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Nebraska, Notre Dame, and Alabama. That Notre Dame visit ended up coming off the schedule. And it was that point that I said, okay, I'm going to roll with OU here, because I don't see any way in the long run that Oklahoma doesn't outmuscle Nebraska and Kansas State for the kid's commitment, especially because he is just such a hand-in-glove fit for the Oklahoma culture. And I do believe that if and when he commits to Oklahoma, we'll have the chance to unpack this a little bit more. But at the time, that was why I felt confident enough to go ahead and predict that Oklahoma would wind up with the kid's pledge. And it's been quite the arduous process up to now to get in position to where you had an actual sizable lead for this kid. But it feels like even just within the last few days, that lead for Brix is lengthening. And our colleague Greg Smith on the Nebraska side, we're sitting here recording this on Sunday afternoon, just a couple hours ago, he fired in a future cast prediction for Grant Brix to Oklahoma based on some stuff that he's been hearing from the Nebraska side, which just goes to show you things are moving in the right direction here. And I do think this is one that could be over by the end of the month. Now, what is really, really interesting is I had a conversation with Brix, talked to his folks Friday in the aftermath of that game. I made several phone calls with some good sources on the recruitment. And there was one thing in particular that I found fascinating to hear, because I did not, I don't use the word shocking because it wasn't shocking to hear, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. I was told by somebody with very intimate knowledge of that recruitment that Brix was very, very close to committing in the month of August, and it would have been Nebraska at that point. But
that sounds right. Yeah.
But yeah. And like there was a lot of buzz for Nebraska at that point in time, and it had come down to OU and Nebraska. Those were the two schools that had gotten a leg up on K-State. And essentially, Brandon, what has happened here is the Sooners 6-0 start has made all the difference. And that is not a recruitment that I would have anticipated winning being a big thing for Brix and his family. Just because, I mean, you look at those three schools, they're in very different places. And wherever he was committing, he was more banking on the future with that program than the here and now. And Nebraska, Kansas State, and Oklahoma, they just as easily as one another can sell the kid on a bright future for the program. So I didn't really anticipate that winning now was going to move the needle, but it seems as though it has. I mean, Ricks told me he watched that OU Texas game last weekend. He and his family, they were sitting there watching Dillon Gabriel lead the Sooners down the field on that final drive, pulling for OU. And again, you look at 6-0 for the Sooners. Kansas State is what, 4-2, 3-3, something like that. I don't know offhand. I know Nebraska is 3-3. And with the way that Nebraska has kind of stumbled out of the gate in year one under Matt Rule, and with Nebraska over the last decade having a very ignominious track record, if you will, as far as what they've accomplished on the gridiron. Then you have Oklahoma, on the other hand, is racing out to match their 2022 win total in the span of 6 games. And it is very clear which program is more immediately poised to compete for championships, and that's Oklahoma.
Nebraska fans say otherwise on the boards I've been just reading, and according to a couple of them, Matt Rule was in town on Friday with Brix. I don't know
that is not true.
Exactly.
Donovan Raiola was.
Exactly. No, I was setting you up for that, by the way, because I read it. I'm like scouring and like reading some of their comments and stuff like that, and somebody was like, "Yeah, well, I haven't heard. Apparently, they live in whatever town. I can't remember the town. What's it?
Logan,
Iowa." And like, yeah, well, these people were in town and blah 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 blah. Haven't heard anything. Like a decision's been made. Whatever. Look, Parker's not. We're not saying a decision has been made to the extent that coaches have been told.
Yeah, no, that, and I am perfectly willing to say that has not happened yet.
There you go.
Coaches have not been informed of a final decision from Brix, but based on the conversations I had Friday night, I am as confident as ever that this thing is pointing in Oklahoma's direction, and the 6-0 start is a big part of that. And Brix's apprehensions, I've said it before, his biggest apprehensions with Nebraska were, well, they haven't really won in a long, long time. And is this regime going to be any different from the previous regimes? And it may well be. I think Matt Rule was a great hire for Nebraska. I think that's a guy that's as well equipped as anybody to turn that program around. But can you count on that? Scott Frost seemed like a great guy to turn the program around, right? He seemed like the guy to turn the program around with his background, but it didn't happen. And so when so many coaches have tried and failed to return Nebraska to championship contention, it is fair to wonder, even if Rule and his staff have a very clear and very attainable vision of what they want to achieve, can it actually be achieved? Again, I think that's a very fair question to ask. And right now, Oklahoma is pretty obviously the program that is better positioned to compete for championships than Nebraska is. I also think I didn't realize this was not on my radar when I went up there Saturday, but Nebraska's top-ranked commit, Carter Nelson, the blue chip tight end from Ainsworth, Nebraska, was on campus with Notre Dame yesterday for that win against USC.
Tight end you.
And Carter Nelson is the one peer that had been recruiting Brix harder than anybody to Nebraska. I have that on good authority. So when the guy that's been hitting you up most regularly about coming with him to Nebraska over the course of the past 3-4 months is suddenly on the campus of a different Power 5 institution, taking a hard look at what they're doing. And that institution is not only 6-2 and nationally ranked, but just coming off a huge victory over a previously unbeaten opponent, then does that do anything to assuage your apprehensions about Nebraska? No, it doesn't.
And again, just reading, there's still a strong belief in Lincoln that Oklahoma is going to go the way of Nebraska as far as the move to the SEC. They can't wrap their head around the fact, like, the difference in what's going on in Norman compared to what was going on in Nebraska going into the Big Ten. And don't get me wrong, the Nebraska going into the Big Ten, they were winning, but they weren't recruiting at an elite level the way Oklahoma is recruiting. And that is the difference. Oklahoma isn't giving up their recruiting grounds in Texas and in Kansas because they're going to be playing against Missouri and all those other schools, like they're still going to be right there. And again, it's only a 3, 4, 5 hour drive wherever somebody lives in Kansas to Norman, Oklahoma. Nebraska gave up their recruiting ground in Oklahoma and in Texas. The states of Oklahoma and Texas have long been what have fed the Big 12 schools and their talents. If you wanted to be a talented team in the Big 12, you recruited the state of Texas, you recruited the state of Oklahoma. Those that didn't get recruited hard by Oklahoma State and Oklahoma went to the Texas Techs, the Kansas States, right? The TCUs of the world, and got developed into really, really good football players because they came out of Oklahoma at a high floor with a higher ceiling and had just been untapped. And they were developed. Nebraska did the same thing. They would go into Oklahoma and they would take some guys from Tulsa, from Lawton, from Oklahoma City, from northern Oklahoma that were higher ranked guys, and they would take them up there and they would go win and develop them into good players that just wanted to leave the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah. I mean, Will Shields,
you get
NFL Hall of Famer.
Right.
Via Nebraska. Lawton, Oklahoma.
There's more than that. There was a linebacker on down that same area. Mincy or what, I can't remember his name, was in the league for a long time. My point is that they would go up there and they would become really good players. And the second you leave to go to the Big Ten and you are never playing in Oklahoma again and you're not playing in Texas anymore, you've essentially wiped out an area of about 35, 40 million in recruiting and just said, you know what? We're not going to be able to recruit that area because we're going to go recruit the Big Ten guys. And it killed them. It killed them. And that was the ending. Oklahoma's moving into an area where they're still going to keep Texas, still going to keep Oklahoma, and they're still going to keep Kansas and Missouri. And now, Parker, they get to add Florida, Alabama. They get to add all these other really talent-rich areas because they're going to be playing in them. This is a win for Oklahoma. I just knocked stuff down. This is a win for Oklahoma. Unlike what Nebraska's doing. So anybody that wants to do this comparison and say Oklahoma and the SEC is the same as Nebraska and the Big Ten, kick rocks because you don't know what you're talking about. And I say that very politely. Well, you don't know what you're talking about.
Again,
you don't know what you're talking about.
When Nebraska made that move, was the grass objectively greener on the other side of the fence?
Money, yeah.
Yeah, as far as money, yes. As far as football?
No.
Where Oklahoma's at is the grass.
Was mad at Texas and Oklahoma for having networks, and they didn't.
Yeah. Is the grass objectively greener in the SEC for Oklahoma than it is in the Big 12 right now? There is zero dispute to be had over that.
No. Yeah. No, it's you're going to win easier in the Big 12 than you are in the SEC. We get it. Everybody gets that. But the thing is if you come out of the SEC as a champ, the odds are you're going to be so battle tested that the playoff is going to be an easy walk for you. Why you see so many SEC teams win the national title because they play a playoff for 12 straight games.
Well, and again, in the Big 12, and this is kind of a weird comparison, but in light of the comments I was making earlier, I think it's apt. In the Big 12, you're Iowa. You're winning, but you're not competing for championships.
Mm-hmm.
At least not right now, given the current landscape of college football.
And you're talking about Nebraska, right?
No, I'm talking about Oklahoma.
Oh,
in the
so
Big
you don't
12.
think you don't think they're going to compete for a title if they? I think if this team, I honestly believe if they make it out of the Big 12 and they beat Texas again and go to the playoff, I think this is actually team. This is the year. This is the 1 year because of the parity that has abound in college football, and I don't know how long it's going to last. This is the year that you would have a chance to make a big splash.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Oklahoma.
I agree with you. And I didn't mean to insinuate that Oklahoma can't compete for a title this year because they can. But I think part of the reason for that is the same reason you see Texas competing for a title here in 2023 3, at least at this point. Who knows what changes over the second half of the season? But Texas is in the CFP discussion at midseason because the pending move to the SEC, which has now been hanging in the balance for almost 2.5 years, has buoyed that program.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It has caused the tide to rise underneath them. That is true of Oklahoma. It is true of Texas. That is why those two programs look like the best teams that the Big 12 has fielded in quite some time, because in their current essence, they are more SEC than Big 12.
I will say this about Nebraska in the Big 10. I think the move of UCLA and USC into the conference, because Nebraska made a lot of their splash back in the day by recruiting California, I think that is going to – they recruited California and Florida very, very well. And then obviously the Northeast, they recruited fairly well. They're going to – they have the Northeast. Florida is still going to be something of, as long as Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Miami, Oklahoma, Ohio State continue to go down in Clemson, continue to go in that state and just pick who they want. You're not in Alabama, obviously. Alabama, I guess there's eight teams that notoriously go into Florida and just start picking off dudes. Whether it's the 3 in-state schools and you got the 5 notoriously strong schools, and Texas is another school that has started to pick up the pace in Florida. It's going to be hard for Nebraska to ever get that back because they've been down for so long. I do think the fact that they're going to be playing in California every year, switching off with UCLA and USC, home and home, is going to help them in recruiting on the West Coast a lot. And I think that could be where Matt Rule and company take that next step. And I know we kind of went off the rails there a little bit with the Grant Brix, but we went off the rails because Nebraska fans are not taking the fact that an Iowa kid 2 hours or an hour and a half away from Lincoln, Nebraska seems to be trending to Norman, Oklahoma. And you're getting these comparisons in these statements, these blanketed, outlandish statements that just make no sense just out of angst.
Yeah, well, I
And
mean, look,
we're just putting it into place.
End of the day, you get a lot of message board crazies that don't understand why any recruit wouldn't pick their school over XYZ other school. That's fans think like fans, and in a fan's mind, their school is the greatest. Why would a recruit not have a desire to come play for their school? But
why would an O-line guy go choose a guy that's put in?
Well, again, I think regardless of what boat you're in, to the rational mind, it makes sense why Brix would be trending to Oklahoma, because not only are they winning, not only are they getting ready for the move to the SEC, but Bill Bedenbaugh has helped make dudes a lot of money at the next level. And while they've been in Norman wearing the crimson and cream, they've been able to be part of some pretty dominant offensive line units as a collective. So for an offensive lineman, Oklahoma is one of those schools where, regardless of your background, regardless of your upbringing and your specific interests outside of football, if you are in it to be an NFL offensive tackle, and trust me, Brix is, that's what he wants. That's what his family wants. That's the long-term goal. If that is the objective, then Oklahoma is one of those schools that simply makes sense.
No doubt. Speaking of offensive line, I was in Louisville watching 2025 5-star Michael Fasusi the other day, and I thought it was interesting the fact that he said he caught himself cheering for Oklahoma at the end of the game on that drive. Because,
Kobe Sellers said the exact same thing.
And I don't think it was because he wanted Oklahoma to win. I want to make that clear to everybody. I think it was because he got caught up in the moment of the game and he wanted to see theatrics.
Sure.
He was there. He said it was the greatest atmosphere. And I quote, "I could see myself playing in that on either side of the ball right now. He said that. Either side. Now, I will add this. There are some strong OU roots at that Louisville High School. Strong OU roots. Strong Oklahoma roots. There's several staffers that either went to the University of Oklahoma and or grew up in Oklahoma. There obviously is Jaden Hardy, who is a part of that. Yeah. When asked if he would visit Oklahoma soon, he asked me, he looked at me, he goes, when's J Hard going? And I said, I think he's going to the UCF game. He said, well, then I'll be at the UCF game. I'll just hitch a ride with him. And so, like, that's the plan, is that both of them will be at the UCF game. You have Fasusi, one of the top linemen in the 2025 class, headed back to Norman this coming weekend. This weekend is looking like it could be quite the weekend for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail. It's looking a lot more interesting bit by bit. And I know Jonah Williams' name is out there. I do want to make it clear that it's down to Ohio State or Oklahoma for him coming in. And I'm kind of leaning towards him going to Ohio State this weekend, particularly because I think Oklahoma would like him to come back at a different time. Or I guess the better way to put it was Oklahoma obviously would love Jonah Williams to be in Norman, but when you have both the opportunity to go further away, that doesn't take place quite as often as Norman. And I think OU is more or less saying, you pick where you want to go this weekend, and we've got a couple more home games. Come here. If you choose to come to OU this weekend, great. Whatever. But if they do have Jonah Williams in town this weekend, could you imagine Jonah Williams, Jaden Hardy, the kid from California, Reggie Powers in town? That's 4 top-notch, 4-star safeties in town with a 24-25 class. I can't pronounce the kid name from California. You want to try it?
Matai Tagawai?
Something to that extent. There you go. Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Yeah, that was a tough one. Essentially, those 4 are supposed to be, or if Jonah Williams makes it in, that'll be 4 guys in town. Jonah Williams, I'll say it. I think he's the top guy on the board for Oklahoma.
Top guy, period.
Yeah, maybe the top guy, period, for Oklahoma in 2025.
Well, I was like,
I don't think that's an outlandish statement.
Well, no, and the reason I asked is because I think it makes a ton of sense. When you have a 5-star at a position where there aren't a ton of 5-stars, yeah, like it makes all the sense in the world why that guy would be the top kid on the board. Because how many defenders are you going to find that are that sizable and that athletic and that versatile? They are rare. They are a rare breed.
Yeah. He's special. I remember when we first saw him in San Antonio and he's wearing OU gloves. And his trainer is like, dude, this dude loves Oklahoma. Like, you guys should go talk to him. And then next thing you know, we start tweeting about him. And then like within 2 or 3 days later, he's offered by OU, and the rest is history. He's a special talent. Brandon Hall is a very, very good evaluator, and he's a very good recruiter. We've seen it. We continue to see it. If he somehow pulls off Michael Boganowski this week, he has completely transformed that safety room in a matter of 12, 18 months. that was one of the biggest question marks on the team, particularly last year. You bring in, you have a healthy Billy Bowman. You get Key Lawrence to buy in a lot more. You have Peyton Bowen. RSJ's healthy. Then you add a Michael Boganowski, a Jaden Hardy, and then you get Reggie Powers at the nickel. That is, and we didn't even talk about Eric McCarty, who has a huge ceiling, huge football IQ. We'll play football before it's all said and done in Norman. That room went from being deprived of depth to, that's a lot of dudes and a lot of really good talent. And I don't think Brent Venables and Brandon Hall would have it any other way, to be honest. Now you feel good. If somebody goes down, you throw somebody in that's just as good. Maybe even better. You never know. Lights come on. Yeah, that position is special at this point. You agree with that? Like, it is special.
Oh, I don't know how you couldn't agree with that.
It's wild, man. It's wild, but obviously this week's huge. If they can pull off Michael Boganowski and pull him away from K-State, that would be huge. Another big dub for Brandon Hall and Brent Venables and Ted Roof at the safety position. This October, bro, it keeps, we've talked about on the last podcast, we set the over under at what, 4.5, and we took the over total. 5.5. I'm going to set it at 5.5 now. Do you take the over?
No, I'll take the slide under. How many have we had in October so far? Just Doc and Kumi?
No, didn't I get
Hatton. Jonathan Hatton.
Yeah, 2026
Okay,
Hatton.
in that
That's
case,
2.
yes, I will take the over.
There you
And there is no assistant that is poised to have a larger month on the trail, a more
Bill
impactful
Bedenbaugh.
month on the trail than Bill Bedenbaugh.
Yeah. If he could somehow pull off Eddie Pierre-Louis, Grant Brix, Daniel Akankumi just this month,
Hello.
that
They
is
wrote him off. He ain't right back.
golly. Oh my gosh. That's a haul on the offensive line. If you added the offensive line, you land those three. You add the offensive line, the defensive line classes together. Does Oklahoma have the best trench class, period, in the nation?
They're close. What would make it pretty indisputable is if they were able to flip the kid that's committed to Missouri.
Or A&M.
Oh, yeah, or him. Take your pick.
You know, we'll see. Okay. Percentage. What's the percentage in your mind that Dominic McKinley flips and the percentage that Williams Winery flips? Anywhere. It doesn't have to be Oklahoma. It doesn't have to be Oklahoma.
Doing that.
It doesn't have to be Oklahoma.
No shot. I'm not putting numbers on it. That's
There you go. There you
that
go.
can only go one way.
Hey, you know what? Would you be shocked if West Coast showed up to Norman here in the next 3 weeks, month?
No, it wouldn't shock me.
Okay. What if there was a Terry Bussey sighting?
That would shock me.
I agree. What if there was a Dominic McKinley sighting?
No, wouldn't be shocked.
No, me either. This was asked on the board. What about Sammy Brown?
No. I just no.
Okay.
Yeah, you're 6-0. You're not getting everybody.
I know. That's what everybody's like. Let's go after everybody. 6-0, top 5. I'm like, dude, this is like old hat for Oklahoma. This is nothing new. You just forgot how this felt after 6 and 7. Only took one season. Oh, your fans are
Exactly.
like, this is all new territory. Like,
Exactly.
no, it's not.
And I promise you,
This
all
is where
those
you've been the whole time.
all those Notre Dame fans, all those Ohio State fans, all those Georgia fans a year ago, they were on those same message boards going, well, why wouldn't Jackson Arnold flip from Oklahoma? Why wouldn't PJ Adebawore flip from Oklahoma? Sorry, Adebawore.
Bedenbaugh.
But
Ooh, I did it.
look,
Wow.
I mean, you commit to a school, there are reasons for that commitment. And it's not as simple as, oh, OU is playing better football. Obviously, it makes more sense for that kid to flip to Oklahoma. Now, in some cases, I think that's true. In Bryant West Coast's case, for instance, it's very understandable that he would be reevaluating things based on the way that Clemson's offense looks. I think that's pretty undeniable. But just because Oklahoma's 6-0 and pick a school is not, doesn't mean there's a good chance you're going to flip one of their commits that you really want.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast.
For a bye week, we ran that one pretty long.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot to talk about. That was a really good week of college football. Saturday was loaded with a lot of drama, and then obviously the recruiting aspect kind of took things to a whole nother level whenever we caught wind of some trending for one of the top 50 players in the country. So that normally will make things, perk up a little bit on a bye week and get the news rolling a little bit more. So I do want to add that you brought up something interesting, Parker, with before we go real quick.
Yeah.
You brought up something interesting about just the can Oklahoma go through this remaining schedule? Will there be any slip ups and all that stuff earlier in the podcast? I didn't touch on that, and I wanted to. I talked to somebody last night that said inside those walls, they are 0-0. A lot of the guys were off even yesterday, and they were coming back yesterday to get prepared for today because they were ready to get started and get the last half of the season rolling. They have taken a no-nonsense mentality inside those walls, essentially taken the mentality of Brent Venables and that staff. Oh. And I was shocked. They said, and their exact quote to me was, all this craziness about the OU Texas and all these videos and stuff, whether it's through the OU media team or whether it's through just national media, just wanting to keep riding that victory. They said, we were done with it on Monday. We were done with it on Monday. It was time to move on. And the players, the coaches, they've moved on. They're ready to roll. Their focus essentially is on UCF and UCF alone. No more talk of Texas, which if you're an Oklahoma fan, you've got to look at that and go, nice. Because that was a big, big question mark under the Muleshoe regime was always, okay, where's the downfall going to happen? It doesn't look like there's anybody taking any. And I think if this didn't come off at 6 and 7, maybe you would have a chance of that taking place. I don't think this team takes anything for granted because they remember last year. They called it's the redemption tour. And they've said it over and over and over and over. And they mean it. And I think that is one of the more interesting aspects to it all. So, anyways, if you want to expound on that, you don't have to. We can go.
I think that's a good place to leave things.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast powered by Ollipop. Remember, go to drinkollipop.com. Type in the promo code CHAMPU20, and you can get one of these 16 magnificent flavors that Ollipop provides. A healthy choice. If you love Coke Pop, whatever you want to call it, you like that bubbly feeling, and you like being healthy, Ollipop is your choice. All right. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day. We'll see you guys later this week.